go. There you go. Work. Let's go. Eyes up. 1, 2, 3.
Welcome into practice today, presented by SiriusXM. The Jets are just 4 days away from their Week 1 matchup against the Bills. Eric Allen, Ethan Greenberg here in the BetMGM studio. We'll hear from Olivia Landis and Brian Baldinger later in the show. EA, there was a point in time where we didn't know if we'd be here, and yet the NFL just 1 day away from kicking off its season in Kansas City.
We are finally here. I'm so pumped. In just a few days, we're going to be here for Pregame Central. We got a new post-game show this year, Jets Overtime, but we got time to talk about all that. Yeah, credit goes to the National Football League and the New York Jets for how they handled this entire offseason, because, listen, we didn't know what was going to happen back in the spring, but the NFL executed flawlessly a virtual spring, and then training camp, different than we've ever experienced before, no preseason games, but the Jets are a healthy crew right now. I know we talked about the testing, dealing with playing football here during the middle of a pandemic, but Sam Darnold is getting some help on the outside, because it's expected that Rashad Perriman and Denzel Mims are practicing fully here Wednesday as preparations begin in earnest for the Buffalo Bills.
It was an unprecedented offseason. It'll probably be an unprecedented season, which leads us to today's headline. Earlier this morning, Adam Gase announced the team's 2020 captains, and they are the following. Quarterback Sam Darnold, who we just saw, tackle George Fant, Steve McClendon, Marcus May, and Matthias Farley.
Marcus May stands out to me because we've talked about it here often back on Training Camp Live. It was just last week. Marcus May had a fabulous camp. People were wondering, how would the Jets respond after that trade that preceded camp, right before training camp? Joe Douglas sending Jamal Adams to Seattle for a package that included Bradley McDougald and a pair of first-round picks. Well, I think Marcus May has taken his play to the next level. He's always been the quarterback in the secondary guy, the guy in charge of getting everybody lined up and making sure they're disguising right. But I think he's going to have more opportunities in this defensive system now to make plays. Again, the Jets, it's funny to say this, ironic to say this, but you feel good where you are at the safety position, because you do have Marcus May, Bradley McDougald, and Ashton Davis, a guy from California who is going to give you the flexibility to line up with three safeties at times.
Marcus May looked like he was vibing out there. Looks like there's a good vibe at practice right now at One Jets Drive. And this time last year, EA, Sam Darnold was preparing for his first game with head coach Adam Gase against the Buffalo Bills, but it was at MetLife Stadium. Now he's preparing for his second year to kick off the season at Orchard Park. And Adam Gase noticed the difference in Sam Darnold. This is what he had to say earlier today on his quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, it just you'll start noticing it is he won't be waiting for, when I'm calling plays, he won't be waiting to hear the whole thing. You'll see him start moving, into the huddle or at the line of scrimmage before I even finish. I mean, it's just the rhythm and cadence is so much different in year two. You're not thinking of, wait a minute, what was this and where does this guy go? It just becomes almost like reactionary. And it's almost like you're on autopilot, and you see a guy going the wrong way, you grab him up, you're over here, and you're not thinking about it. You're not. That picture's already there in your head, and you're just kind of reacting to it. To where instead of being like, wait a minute, where was this guy supposed to be? And if a guy asks, hey, what do I got? It's not a, you're not sitting there going, okay, he's got this because he's in this spot. It's just kind of like reaction, and that changes a lot for a quarterback, because now you're not worried about it. You're reacting to all that stuff, and you're focused on, hey, what's the defense doing? All right, hey, I got to do this in the protection. Here's where the ball needs to go. I mean, it's a lot of things happening really fast, but it's amazing what a guy's brain can do, just the more familiar that he gets with all these little situations and system type things.
The Jets finished their 2019 season, actually where they're starting their 2020 season, that's at Orchard Park. And Sam Darnold played that game. The Bills starters didn't play a whole lot. But that Bills defense, EA, they're a group that's played together a long time. They finished number 3 overall in the NFL and number 4 against the pass, and they just locked up Tre'Davious White to a multi-year extension.
Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier, you have the system continuity. Sam Darnold here is getting ready for Bills defense that arguably you could say this secondary matches up with anybody in the National Football League. You mentioned Trey White. They added Josh Norman to the equation. Maybe he fits in there. He had success with McDermott in Carolina before. He's not going to practice today. There's some injury information for you coming out of Buffalo, so we'll have to see who's playing opposite Trey White. But Sam Darnold is going to have to identify with his new center, Connor McGovern, what they are doing in that defensive backfield, because those safeties, Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde, they disguise awfully well in Buffalo. And you mentioned that unit, you have elite players, I think, on all 3 levels that Sam Darnold is going to be facing. Tremaine Edmonds, a young linebacker who is rangy and he can cover a lot of ground in a hurry. And then up front, a lot of different guys, but most notably Ed Oliver. Ed Oliver was very good his rookie season. I know the Bills have high hopes for him here too. And
of course, Tremaine Edmonds, you mentioned it, a very young player. And let's head to our sideline report with Olivia Landis. The Jets' first unofficial depth chart was posted earlier this week. And I'm just curious, Liv, what caught your eye, if anything, about the Jets' first depth chart?
I'm glad you asked, Ethan. Like you mentioned, the team did release an unofficial depth chart this past weekend following roster cuts, and one particular group stood out. That's the offensive line. Now, the unofficial depth chart does list 5 starters there: rookie Mekhi Becton, Alex Lewis, Connor McGovern, Greg Van Roten, and George Fant, who, by the way, was recently just named by head coach Adam Gase one of the 5 team captains. This particular offensive line group consists of 4 new starters along that line. This group did take the majority of the first team reps all throughout training camp, so it doesn't necessarily come as a surprise that they were named as that first team. However, the biggest question now moving forward is how is this line going to be able to develop chemistry both quickly and efficiently? General Manager Joe Douglas was asked that by the media this week, and his answer was they scouted these 5 players as the starters for a long time, dating all the way back to their college playing days, to assess them both on their talent level and their character level. The key word there is character. That is a word that General Manager Joe Douglas has been reiterating all season long and last season since he got that general manager position. It's something he wants to implement into this culture. So as of right now, unofficially, those are the 5 starters along the offensive line.
Liv, our cameras right now are on Mekhi Becton, the rookie, who is listed as a starter at left tackle on that unofficial depth chart. But let's go back to the right. George Fant came over from the Seattle Seahawks this offseason, an under-the-radar signing. What did the Jets like about him? Because, as Ethan mentioned earlier this morning, he was named the captain here. What did Joe Douglas and Adam Gase say about Fant and how he's acclimated here?
Head coach Adam Gase had a lot of very good things to say about George Fant. He said first and foremost, he is so impressed by the way he handles himself as a complete professional. He said he's very vocal inside that offensive line group. He asks the right questions. He always asks, well, why? Why are we doing this behind each and every play that they talk about? He said he's also noticed that he's really taken, you mentioned rookie Mekhi Becton, George Fant has taken him under his wing and really tried to show him the ropes. I think those are all things that Adam Gase, and Joe Douglas for that matter, have been very impressed with George Fant, which has resulted in him being one of the team captains. But as you guys know, Adam Gase announced it, but it is a team decision, so the players also noticed his leadership inside that locker room.
Liv, thanks a lot. We'll be hearing from you soon later in the show. EA, let's take a look at the injury report here. The Jets a couple days ago placed 4 players on injured reserve. You look at a pair of receivers, the Smiths. Jeff Smith and Vincent Smith, no relation. But the good news for the Jets, what's not listed here, is that both Denzel Mims and Brashad Perriman are expected to be full goes.
Yeah, and this will be the first full go practice of Denzel Mims' Jets career. Brashad Perriman established chemistry with Sam Darnold early on in training camp, was dealing with some knee swelling. You're looking at Adam Gase right now actually talked to Denzel Mims. Josh Malone is back as a practice squad performer. He's number 83. You got Braxton Berrios in there, number 10. We're going to watch Mims right now take a rep. So he is expected to practice fully today. He told the media last week he'll definitely be ready for week 1. Now, what that actually entails here when we get to Buffalo, who knows, because how much of this system can he grasp? Is there a package of plays the Jets want to use Denzel Mims in? On that unofficial depth chart, Chris Hogan is listed as the starter opposite Brashad Perriman, and of course, Jamison Crowder manning that slot position. But I know we've been talking about injuries throughout training camp. By and large, the Jets are a healthy group here as we start the week, bottom line, and they're getting healthier at the wide receiver spot.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I wanted to bring this up. The Jets have 5 players on their active roster at receiver. And I would say, except for Mims, you saw flashes of chemistry from Sam Darnold to the majority of those players in training camp. I'm talking about Chris Hogan. We talked about Brashad Perriman. Braxton Berrios had a very good camp. Then as you get further down, you think about the guys that are on the practice squad, like that guy, number 18, Dante Moncrief. He's on the practice squad right now, but if there's a scenario where he could actually be elevated for game days because of the new rules that allows 2 practice squad players to be bumped up for the game, they go right back down to the practice squad. So I think during training camp you saw there was a lot of injuries, but right now, like you said, healthy group, and I think that the Jets are feeling good about their players.
Outstanding point as we watch Chris Hogan. By the way, you got to check out the Official Jets podcast. Hogan was a tremendous guest this week. He's the guy who came in, soaked up all the offense, and Darnold was thrown to him from the get in the parking lot, it felt like. And Chris Hogan with the nickname 7-Eleven because he's always open. He's a guy who's completing the quartet here in the AFC East because the Jets are the 4th team in the AFC East he is playing with. He really made his name in the league with the Buffalo Bills, so it's special for him going back there, but it's going to be very interesting because he knows Bills Mafia more than most. Bills Mafia is not going to be in the stands. This is a very unique opening day that the Jets will be facing, and everybody in the National Football League will be encountering here this weekend.
So keeping on the theme of receivers, the Bills, they got a new receiver. I'd say they're pretty excited about their debut of Stefon Diggs. And for more on him, let's hear from our Brian Baldinger and a Baldi's Breakdown presented by Sharp.
Thanks, Ethan. The Bills acquired their true number 1 wide receiver when they traded for Stefon Diggs this offseason. He provides everything you want at the number 1 wide receiver. I mean, he's got speed. He can beat man coverage. He understands how to beat double teams, and he's elusive. All that and more. Let's take a look at the film. The Bills traded for Stefon Diggs in the offseason. Here he is at the bottom. He is a great route runner. He's a true number 1 wide receiver. He can beat corners, and his ability to catch it, to toe tap drag, as good as it gets. He can flat out run by you. Here is at the bottom against Josh Norman. Little stutter and go. But he can get by just about any corner, and he can also take a hit. Right here, you're going to see him up at the top against Janoris Jenkins. 3rd and 1 in overtime in a playoff game. They need the play. You need the first down. You got to possess the ball. Might just call Stefon Diggs' name to do it. And then finally, here he is on a crossing route. Just fearless coming across the middle. He just wants the ball. Doesn't matter what happens and what you do to him at the end of the play. He's got great hands. He's a great route runner. He's got elite speed. He's a true number 1 wide receiver, something the Bills haven't had since Josh Allen has been the quarterback.
The Jets are going to have their hands full with Stefon Diggs, and That man right there, Bless Austin, could very well be lining up against number 14 for the Buffalo Bills. They got a tough test last season. Diggs, 63 receptions, 1,130 yards, and 6 touchdowns. And that, by the way, that catch against the Redskins in the double coverage was sick.
Well, listen, have you seen the cut-ups on Diggs? He can make plays all over the field. There are a lot of plays where you're like, oh, God. Listen, Bless Austin, under the radar, I'm using that phrase again, but I think that he had a strong camp. He's been lining up with the first team since the get. He got his feet wet in the National Football League last year. Had some ups and downs, no doubt about that, but I like his physicality, his speed, and he's a rangy guy. So he is stepping into the spotlight, and there's number 35, real close to him, Pierre Desir. He was battling a nagging hamstring early in training camp, but you would figure the Jets' opening day guys here, at least from the unofficial depth chart, you're going to have Bless Austin, you're going to have Pierre Desir on the outside, and then Brian Poole in that slot, in that nickel position, because you mentioned the Bills receivers. Bottom line, you can make the argument top 5 in the National Football League right now because John Brown had more than 1,000 yards receiving last year. You add Diggs to the mix, who averaged more than 17 yards a pop. And then Cole Beasley's going to be dealing with Brian Poole on Sunday.
Yeah, you kind of stole my thunder there. I was going to ask what you thought of the Bills' receiving corps from top to bottom. Really, just what do you think of their offense now with adding Diggs? You mentioned John Brown last season had a very good year. Devin Singletary and Zach Moss are the running backs there. What do you make of the supporting cast around Josh Allen?
I just think there's a lot of similarities between the New York Jets and the Buffalo Bills. And what I mean by that is the Buffalo Bills last season rebuilt their offensive line in front of Josh Allen. That's exactly what the New York Jets did this offseason. They have a lot of skill position talent. Devin Singletary popped on the radar as a rookie, really shifty back. He's not going to beat you or run away from you, but he can make you miss in a phone booth. They drafted Zach Moss. They have some interesting players at the tight end position, but for me, they have set it up for what are you, Josh Allen? Are you going to be able to take the next step? 59% passer last year as we look at Ashton Davis and Quincy Wilson, of course. Are you going to be able to take the next step? And that starts week 1 against the New York Jets, because Greg Williams is going to throw everything but the kitchen, maybe including the kitchen sink at Josh Allen. You want to take away their run game, and you have to be prepared for Josh Allen to tuck it, because they will call for quarterback runs. The Buffalo Bills will. And the Jets, I think they're going to be up for this challenge. You know Greg Williams is going to have a hell of a plan.
Yeah, Josh Allen, 3rd in the NFL last season among quarterbacks in rushing yards. And it's time for a new segment here on Practice Today, presented by SiriusXM. It's our Stats Amazing segment, courtesy of our own Randy Lang, who keeps up the best stats, digs up gems week after week. And right here, Sunday's game will be the Jets' 14th season opener against the Bills, the most against any single opponent, and their 11th season opener at Buffalo, the most on the road against a single opponent in franchise history.
So, Ethan, do you think this can set the tone for the New York Jets season, much like it did last year for the Bills? Remember, the Jets had a 16-0 lead. Of course, the Bills came racing back late. We saw C.J. Mosley go down, but the Bills gained momentum from that opener, and they ultimately made the playoffs. This is a big shot, a big opportunity, I think, for the Jets in week 1.
Yeah, I think for me, I think it could set the tone, because I think week 1, at least, I would imagine, leaves a sour taste in the returning guys' mouths, right? It's like Sam Darnold, that's a game that I think when you look back on, you're like, well, I think the Jets probably should have won that after a 16-0 lead. And we'll see what Orchard Park has in store for the Jets and Bills on Sunday. But if the Jets do come back home with a victory, I do think it could set the tone for the Jets season.
Number 26, ball in his left hand right there, Le'Veon Bell.
Always showing the abs, by the way.
I anticipate the Jets to have a lot more success on the ground this year, just because that line was fortified this offseason, and Joe Douglas talked about the line, how impressed he was by them throughout the summer. And Adam Gase talked about the sheer size. So I know we've talked about it before, meaning, oh, the line's going to help out Sam Darnold. Well, the line is going to help Le'Veon Bell, Frank Gore, and company as well. And let's see if the Jets can get that ground game established.
And if you're looking at number 21, that's Frank Gore. He changed his jersey from 25 to 21, back in the OG. Nate Hairston now in 25. And to wrap up here on Practice Today, presented by SiriusXM, let's bring back Olivia Landis for our Roundtable segment. And the other week, probably about a week ago, Liv, Mekhi Becton started circling the on Instagram, kind of went virtual here because he has a huge, big ticket chain, and he said it was worth $175,000. He told the media that. There it is right there, the big ticket, admit one. So that begs the question. Liv, we'll start with you, then we'll head to EA, and then I'll wrap it up. If you had a chain, what would you put on it?
Well, first of all, Ethan, I just have to say that honestly, I would probably never be able to afford a $175,000 chain. But if I did, I'm going to go a little left field here. I'm probably just going to do something like Dog Mom. Because if you know me, you know how much my dear, wonderful little dog child Mowgli means to me. So I think that's all I can really think of. That's all I can think of being valuable enough to put on my chain. I don't want to put my own name on a chain, so I think I'd have to be Mowgli's mom or Dog Mom. I want everyone to know it.
I think you got to put Mowgli's name on there. It can't just be Dog Mom. Yeah, Dog Mom could be anybody, and then somebody's going to steal a $175,000 chain from you. It's got to say like Mowgli's mom or something.
Even still,
That's
though,
true.
like Dog Mom, you could put on the back of your car as a bumper sticker, not $175,000 worth of chain. Okay.
Don't hate on me. Don't hate on me, Greenberg. Listen, you asked what my answer would be. That's my answer.
On a serious note, I love Mekhi Becton's personality. He is a guy who wants to learn. He continues to work on his technique on the field, and good for him. Listen, splurge a little bit. You get in the National Football League and spend a little money, that's okay. What I would do is, opposed to taking out a home equity loan, I would use $174,000 towards house renovations, and then use.
Oh no!
Yes, use $1,000.
We didn't ask what you were doing with the money.
Oh well.
We asked what are you doing with the chain. What are you putting on it?
I would put family members on there. Okay, but I'd just leave it at that. But I'd take the 170. I wouldn't spend $175,000 and. That category. I'd probably use $174,000 on my house.
I think that's a very fair assessment. I think you, Olivia, and myself are in agreement with that. If I had a chain of that size, and granted this is like an item at this point on his neck, I'd have to go with a nickname of mine from my childhood. It'd have to be E-Train, because I think that's the only thing that's worthy of a chain like that. And I like the idea of putting family members' names on there. Yeah. Maybe like make your own version of dog tags or whatever you want to do for, like, a lot of my family members are military people.
Yep.
But I think if I had to do something of my own, I'd put E-Train. What do you guys think of that?
Ethan, I have to ask.
Yep.
I have to ask. Is the E-Train the late train? Is it the early train? Is it the right on time train? I mean, what kind of people are taking the E-Train?
Early. E for early. If you're not on time, you're late. How about that? And if you're early, you're on
like
time.
That.
I would say I don't think the E-Train's running today.
All right. Well, guess what? You and I are both E's, so it could be you. Maybe your E-Train's not running.
The big ticket, a big-time game on the way for him and the New York Jets on Sunday.
All right. That's all we have here on Practice Today, presented by SiriusXM. Thank you to EarthCam for any additional footage. Thank you, Liv, Brian Baldinger. We'll be back Sunday morning, pregame Central.